All right, so anyone new that came in, just a quick reminder, at the bottom, you'll see a Q&A button. So if you have any questions during the webinar, just post them in there and we'll do a raffle at the end and obviously answer your questions as well. But I think this is a good time to pass it over to Kate and Vlad to run the webinar.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Evelyn. Really appreciate it. So just to do some quick intros on our part. So my name is Kate Bernier. I'm one of the co-founders and COO of Airbo. I have been in the benefits engagement space for about the past 12 years now, and I've had the pleasure of working with hundreds of companies across all industries to figure out how we can make benefits engagement an easier process for everyone involved. And I'll pass it over to you, Vlad.
Thanks, Kate. My name is Vlad Geister. I'm co-founder and CEO of Airbo. Benefits engagement is most what I've been doing since I started in the industry in 2006. Started Willis Towers Watson's social media practice back then. Went on to start a series of companies, H-Engage, Airbo, all sort of one thing, trying to address the same set of problems, which is how to get people to actually pay attention and use their benefits correctly throughout their life. All right, well, today we are going to talk about new hire onboarding. And what we're going to talk through is best practices and tips. We're going to really use Kate's wealth of knowledge from having worked with a lot of organizations on a very specific set of problems that are common with new hire onboarding. We'll also chat a little bit about why this has flared up as a big issue where it really wasn't a very big issue for a very long time. We'll close off today's session by giving you a demo of our free new hire onboarding program that is specifically for brokers to give to their clients for free. And we will, of course, do a Q&A and raffle. We'll probably take your questions throughout, but I really can't hype this raffle enough, which is by asking a question, you're automatically entered into a drawing for a $50 gift card to, I think it's Amazon, but could be something else. We don't know how crazy we're feeling today. So please ask a question as they come up. We love interactivity. We love making sure that we're covering the right stuff. Okay, so to dive into it, why are we discussing new hire benefits and onboarding today? Well, this has been a topic for a lot of our clients for quite a while. And it's an interesting year to prove the point, at least 2023 was, that economists always seem to be wrong. And so if you basically do the opposite of what they say, you'll probably make more money. We were expecting a big recession last year. We were expecting the labor shortage to get better. We were expecting a pretty big slowdown. In fact, what we've seen for over the last few years is, yes, things have become better in terms of labor shortage, but it's certainly not solved. Even pre-COVID, I think what's really interesting to draw your attention on this graph is that the orange line represents unemployed workers, and the yellow line represents job openings over the course of the last 20 some odd years or so. And we can see is that around 2018, those two lines cross. And for those of us that grew up during a relatively slow economic market in the United States, when it comes to finding a job, felt kind of lucky to have a job. At least when I came out from school around 2006, 2007, we crossed over into a much different market where there were simply more job openings than there were people to fill those jobs. During COVID, obviously that flipped quite a bit, but since then, we have been on a very difficult labor market where job openings have exceeded unemployed workers by quite a bit. And though those numbers are getting better, that delta remains and is not really projected to go away anytime soon with retirements, et cetera, coming our way. Now, when you think about your clients, and we think about our clients, we certainly think of it in terms of industries. And there's a few different ways to think about the job shortages in different industries. This graph shows added jobs by industry as of 2024 January. And we see that education and health added a lot of jobs, business services, second biggest, retail, government. Manufacturing is relatively low. It's been in a kind of low grade, low hiring story for a little bit. This is the people that are actually coming into organizations and of course actually need to be onboarded once they're in. Another way to look at this data is based on job shortages. And there are very specific industries that are experiencing high levels of job shortages. And here what we're looking at is the yellow represents filled job openings, and the blue, dark blue, represents unfilled job openings. So the more unfilled job openings there are within the industry, the more the client is probably thinking about how do I attract new employees and how do I actually retain the ones that I have. So professional and business services, quite a lot of job openings. Durable goods manufacturing, which on the prior list was relatively low in terms of jobs added, is actually a place where clients are thinking long and hard about how do I hang on to my workers and how do I add new ones. There's a good chance that it'll only expand before it gets better with how much money is coming into manufacturing in the United States. So I think that just overall, it's really interesting to think about these issues within the scope of like what's going on in the industry, but from an industry perspective, like industry specific, vertical specific perspective. What's equally interesting to me is the headlines that we're getting right now. So every day right now, we are seeing announcements about layoffs. And those layoffs are happening in generally information services, technologies, those kinds of places where we're seeing the effects of AI hit first. They're moving dollars into AI investments instead of some of their making up for some of the overhiring that they did. And so disproportionately, the layoffs that we're seeing are in technology kinds of companies. And that has not really hit most organizations in the United States that are outside of technology. So I just want to throw out like a note of caution on the narrative, I think, that's being pushed right now, that there's a lot of layoffs going on, because if you look at the total numbers, that's not really the story economy-wide. But narrative has power. And from a CEO perspective, there's absolutely no denying that most CEOs are trying to squeeze expenses right now. And most HR staff, even in organizations that are experiencing labor shortages, are being pressed in terms of resources. And we're seeing either literally jobs being cut in HR or simply not replaced when someone is leaving. And this is being cheered by the CEO because you're trying to decrease your expenses in an environment of higher interest rates. So I think I kind of say this most years, but the last few years I haven't. We've really seen this flip where I think we went from a story about engaging employees, helping employees, making sure that they feel good, to now a story of let's get them back in the office. It's a little harsher. And even though the job cuts are not really happening in most places, the threat of those job cuts is certainly part of the story. And HR in particular is being squeezed. So why are we talking about new hire onboarding today as a big need is because we've got this confluence of factors where you've got industries that actually have a job shortage, so they need to attract and retain their talent. You've got industries that are actually hiring a bunch, so they need to onboard their talent. and you've got an HR function that does not have the resources to actually do that work and do benefits onboarding when that person comes into the organization. And so that person is being left relatively on their own. And Kate, not to put you on the spot, but like, I feel like you just had a story that someone told you that from a prospect or a client about how she was kind of left on her own, or how she handled it.
Yeah, I was talking with a group last, I think Friday, and she was telling me how she gets benefits information to her new hires. And so they have multiple different locations, and she's one benefit person for about 800 employees. And this is what she called it. She said she leaves them love notes, which are attachments on paychecks. So she literally goes to all locations for new hires, attaches something to a paycheck that tells them that they need to contact HR to get, or excuse me, contact benefits to get the benefits information, because they were having such a problem, or they are having such a problem with people just not even paying attention to benefits onboarding, or like going through their benefits enrollment. So the only solution that she had was to staple something to their first paycheck to be able to get information in front of them, because people were just not paying attention. And so this is one person for an 800 person company, and they're getting in at least 20 or so new hires a month. That's a ton of overhead work for one individual on top of everything else she was in control of.
Yeah, it's not a
And I
great.
hear stories like that all the time, where it's just like they're, benefits and HR are just doing the best they can with the resources they have.
Not a great HR to FTE ratio there. That one really blew me away.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do next is actually dive into a few questions that we want to address, and how to solve the common challenges associated with benefits onboarding. So we kind of think about this webinar in two pieces. I'm kind of doing on-the-fly adjustment based on some of the questions that we're getting so far. The first chunk is going to be about the common challenges that we're seeing from the hundreds of clients that we work with in bringing people into the organization, and Kate's recommendations for how to solve those challenges. This is going to be independent of Airbo. I know many of you on the call use Airbo for one or more of your groups. We're going to really just sort of talk about how we would address these challenges. Kate, you can kind of touch upon the Airbo angle if it's appropriate, but we want folks to walk away here with knowledge about how to address these things, even if a group is not using Airbo, and there's patterns that can be used outside of our particular solution, and we love to share those. Towards the back end, we will talk about specifically Airbo's solution and how we address these challenges within our software. And we like to bucket that on its own so that we're not kind of contaminating the broadly applicable knowledge with stuff about our product. So if you have asked a question about Airbo and you don't see us answering it on the spot, I promise we will get to it. Before we jump into this list, there's just one question I want to answer. I understand there's a pressure to return to the office or workplace. However, do you not see more of a hybrid model instead of 100% back to the office? I think it depends, and I think we're seeing a lot of social pressure to undo this. Specifically, I just heard about an organization where manufacturing employees were very upset that HR and other white collar folks did not have to come into the office in a consistent schedule, and they did. And so I think culturally, we're going to see a lot more rollback on this than we anticipate, in specifically environments where you have employees that are have to be on the line and provide live service, do something in person. And management not showing up the same way. That's not a sustainable way to run an organization if those two populations are pushing towards the same goals. So yeah, I do think generally hybrid is going to stick at a higher portion of the population than before the pandemic. I think the latest numbers I saw is that it's been stabilizing at 30%, but I don't think that is really stabilized. I think we're going to actually see that continue to drop and people being called more and more back into the office personally. All right. Well, the common challenges that we're seeing amongst new hire onboarding is language, hard to reach populations, high employee turnover, limited HR resources, and my favorite, tech savviness and multi-generational support, which is really code for how do you handle Gen Z TikTok dances. So why don't we start out with language barriers, which, Kate, I feel like you really zoomed in on this a couple years back, where you realized this was a much bigger issue than for most organizations than was being acknowledged at the time.
Yeah, I think there's, I mean, a huge percent of our US workforce is English as a second language. And really, like, specifically when you're talking about benefits information, which is already complex to an employee that speaks English. Like, I mean, we're all in the benefits industry, and sometimes I need to look something up to understand it completely. And so what we were really finding, both for new hires and for general benefits education, is that the language barrier was just making it impossible for employees that were English as a second language to have any concept of how their benefits work. So we were providing them benefits, but they didn't even know where to begin. And so what was happening, and it still does happen quite a bit today, is these employees will bring something home and they'll have a child dependent translate it for them, or in some organizations, like manufacturing organizations, there's usually a point person that speaks English as well as an additional language, and they are on point for translating for a group of employees. And so really, like, what we were seeing, and we're still seeing today, is that a lot of companies weren't putting resources towards language barriers. And it's becoming a bigger and bigger challenge, and honestly a more important problem to solve now. And so what we're seeing just across the board is groups are doing more on the language front. So there's some simple ways that they're doing it, which is essentially they are just like providing flyers in different languages, or maybe they're providing benefit guides in different languages. Or they might be bringing in like a translator to orientations if they have a lot of employees that they know are going to be predominantly speaking Spanish. And so those were really the main things. I will note that those options can be expensive, and especially when you have limited resources, bringing in a translator, to do an orientation every couple of weeks can be very expensive to do. But I think it's worth companies looking at, because if you start to look at retention and how much it costs to retain an employee that you've hired, and employees also wanting to fully understand their benefits and their offering, and knowing that, hey, their benefit package at company A that they're currently at is much richer than company B, which pays $1 more an hour, that's where it gets really important to make sure that you're providing this information to employees in languages that they can understand, so they know the full value that they're getting when they start at the company.
Yeah.
And so, oh, sorry, go ahead, Bud.
No, sorry.
And so I think, like, there's obviously the more complex ways to do this, which is, bringing in a translator, but there is a lot of tools out there that you can use to just translate simple documents, to be able to provide even a simple version of this benefits information to employees. And I will go through Airbo's translation capabilities, because as you've probably noticed, this is something that's really important to us, that we want to get information in front of everybody. So I'll go through how we do that specifically later on the call.
But just for Patry, does Airbo offer Creole as a language?
It does, yes. We offer 42 automatic translation languages.
Cool.
I think one of my favorite features we've ever released.
Yeah,
very close to my heart, actually.
Argued the hardest for, and
yes.
Also when.
Yeah. So that's language barriers. So I think, like, one thing to walk away with from this, as you're working with your groups or you're working with your employees, is it's a good idea to just know what languages employees speak. And so, like, having a good idea of the languages, and then also looking into ways that you can translate some important information, whether that's a benefit guide or even just some flyers or ways that you can get information to them in an easier format for them to understand. You'd be surprised at how many companies that I talk with that don't know all of the languages of employees. And so I think that's a great place to start.
You know, I'm actually really happy you called that out, because I think that sometimes sometimes it's just asking that question and everybody in the room can kind of feel a little bit blown away in that moment. It goes a long way. And just saying, what languages do we think they speak? And the second question, which is not usually easily answerable, which is like, how many people do we think speak that language? Like, how big of a deal is this? And are there locations where it's a bigger deal than other places? So diagnosing that problem, because it is a very real problem. And I have a suspicion, which is not data backed, but if you look at how the US workforce has grown over the last couple of years and the situation that we're having at the border, it is really hard to imagine that there isn't a possible surge in migrant workers that are working at many of our employers. And I don't think that this language issue is like all of a sudden popping up in a more acute way out of nowhere. I think all these things are a little bit related, and you see it in the data and you see it in the news. So could be a bigger and bigger thing to track. Why don't we move on to hard to reach populations?
Perfect. Awesome. So hard to reach populations. So when we say hard to reach populations, this actually covers a lot of people. So this is covering potentially remote employees. This is covering employees that are in like manufacturing environments. Maybe they have company emails, maybe they don't. This could be covering healthcare populations, mining, you name it. Basically populations that you don't have a direct line to. And so I'm actually going to start kind of with exactly what we had just ended talking about with language barriers, is that it's a really good idea to start knowing like, who are your hard to reach populations? What current contact channels do you have for them? And then where could you go and make changes? And so, for example, let's say that you have, actually, I'm going to use an example from a company I was on the phone with today. So they have emails for everybody. So every employee has an email, but they just figured out that only 40% of their population has actually activated their email. So has logged in one time. So their main method of communication is email. That's how they send communications out to employees. So they just realized that 60% of their population is not actually getting anything that they sent out. And so this is something that they just figured out fairly recently. And so now they're starting to look at, okay, how do we actually get in front of that 60%? Is it that we need to send something home? Is it that we need to collect different forms of contact information? Maybe their phone number or their personal email. Do we need to start communicating with them on that? Do we need to get in front of their managers to tell them to go activate their emails? And so when you start to look at your population, you need to really think about, okay, how am I reaching this group of employees? How am I reaching this group of employees? And then what channels or what changes can I make to potentially get in front of them? So for example, this group that I talked with today, they decided that they have phone numbers. And so they are going to start reaching out to employees with phone numbers to get in front of them and allow them to opt out if they don't want to receive communications, because it's a way for them to get in front of a huge percentage of their population.
I think this falls into another one of these categories of really simple questions that most people don't ask. We get so wrapped up in the high level concepts around benefits and well-being and this program and that vendor, and it's all really fun to talk about, and strategies are all really fun to talk about. I love it, but it really blew me away when I realized that most people didn't know the things that we were making available to them. Like when I was a consultant at Willis Towers Watson, like there was a big aha moment where we just spent like 3-4 months brainstorming strategy. And then we deployed the programs and like nothing happened. And then we went back and did it again and nothing happened. And it was like 2 years in and I was like, wait a minute. nothing's happening because no one's paying attention. And you start asking at the whys behind no one's paying attention. And surprising number of times, the answer is we don't have a way to email them. We don't have a way to text them. We don't have capacity to figure it out. IT won't let us do something. We don't know who is actually going to the microsite that we spent thousands of dollars building. So when we say hard to reach populations, we're really literally talking about engagement infrastructure. Like,
Yeah.
do you have a way to reach people where you know you've actually reached them?
And so just following along to that, one key thing I would say before we move on to the next is, as you're onboarding new employees, use that as your opportunity to start getting your contact information better. So get their phone number, get their personal email, get consent for to send communications to both of them. And that's something that it could be just a simple form that you add into their like packet. If like you have a group that's a paper first packet or paper first kind of new hire setup, or if you have like Workday, Navigator, any of those, just add it as a field and there should be an opt-in. So that would be like my one like takeaway is just start doing it for new hires as you're bringing them in, and you can continue to make it better over time.
Great suggestion. It is the simplest thing that everyone should start doing immediately. It's a no-brainer. Do have a good question for you from Eric, which is not an easy question to answer, but maybe you can answer it a couple different ways so it's useful. So Eric wants to know, what is the Airbo SMS participation within like a client?
Okay, so it is very dependent on the group. I will say, so we have some populations that probably have about 70% of their employees that are participating on Airbo on a mobile device. And so those are populations where the company has made a decision to mainly communicate with employees via text message, and that's their main channel. And they've determined that that's their best communication. That's the best channel for their communication infrastructure. And we see really consistent participation. I mean, I don't know about you all, but I can never have a text message notification on my phone. So like we see that behavior with most people, whereas email, people are more okay with having like those notifications.
Meaning
And
they
so,
don't open the emails and
exactly
the text messages. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So like for groups that really believe that SMS is going to get in front of their employees, we have tremendous participation. We also, and we have ways that you can you can send a text message to employees and they can opt out, or we can opt them in. So there's multiple ways that we can collect contact information. So it's also a little bit dependent on how we get the process started for an employer. The other thing I'll just mention is, at least on the Airbo side, is we allow employees to add their phone number if they'd like, even if it's a group that is sending emails only. And so with those, we typically get about like, I'd say on average, like 10 to 15% of employees that opt in to text messages without us already having their contact info or doing a campaign to collect contact info. So we do see employees make the decision themselves to get contact info.
Yeah, I think this is one where some organizations get a little bit tripped up because they start imagining the worst case, which is someone not wanting to receive those messages. Oh my God, what happens? The good news is that that's like a really broadly solved problem by everybody. Like there's laws around it, there's standards. It actually happens very, very little in our use case around benefits because people actually want this information and it makes their life better and it makes it more likely that they stay alive and live longer. So they're heavily vested in generally receiving this information. They just want it to be done easier. So you just solve for that. You make it very clear what the risk mitigation strategy is around that specific variable that is important to have a policy around. But this is a pretty smooth sailing kind of thing that everyone's surprised by how good it is and how successful it is and how little issues there really are.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about high employee turnover.
Cool.
I don't know why I said it in a beat way. It's not a happy topic.
But you can make it, I guess, low employee turnover with some key tactics, right?
Yeah.
So this one is really apparent right now. And I especially see this like mainly in, or at least from the groups I'm talking with, like manufacturing and like healthcare organizations, just for the, like, just what I hear kind of anecdotally. And so on this front, I think the really important thing with new hires is they have to feel special right off the bat. And I think there's a lot of ways to do that, but from a benefits perspective, it's simply that we have to teach them about the benefits they have, and we have to make them help them understand that they have a really great benefits package with this organization. Because a lot of times employees in these industries are, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, they're leaving for like $1 or $2 more an hour at competitors, but they probably don't understand that their benefits actually like have an impact on that. So they might be going to an organization that has worse benefits. And so like actually their take home pay is going to be less because their monthly premium is higher. And so I think like the biggest takeaway here with high employee turnover from a benefits perspective is just making sure that employees really understand their package, understand what they signed up for, and know how to use their plans, which does go back to how are you getting in front of them, and also like language challenge, and then making sure that the benefits content is really easy that they're seeing. So it's not written in a complex way.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity with benefits to use loss aversion in order to retain. Like yes, the benefits are really valuable, and making sure they understand the value of their benefits. Most people I talk to actually don't even know what they have, when this is like white collar employees as much as anybody. So if you can get people to understand what they have, they generally are afraid to lose it when they move to another employer where they don't understand what they have yet. So this is a lever that exists to lower employee turnover. But the other piece of this is that high employee turnover means that the volume of onboarding is higher because you have to replace the people that are leaving. So any organizations that are experiencing high employee turnover, it really is worth doing an audit of the process for onboarding new employees. I think a lot of times we're all just trying to get through the day and do our best, and kind of just get to the next one. But taking a step back and seeing where minutes and tens of minutes can be shaved add up really, really quickly for benefits onboarding. And so it just might be an area to poke at for your organization or some of your clients' organizations.
Yeah.
Well, limited HR resources. Very closely tied topic, isn't it?
Yeah. So this one, I think, kind of, as Vlad mentioned, and I've seen this personally, that benefits and HR teams are a place where jobs are being cut, or they're just being stretched to do more within like the current team that they have. And so we are seeing that. And so I think the main thing here is when you're onboarding employees or you're doing a new onboarding program, make sure it's something that can be repeated with every employee, yet still has that personal feel. So I've talked to groups where they have, hundreds of employees, but the benefits person does one-on-one meetings, and they seem really stressed out. They don't like have much time to do their day-to-day job. And so it just is a really unattainable expectation essentially for them. And so they, within the context of chatting with me, they were looking for something where they were able to be able to provide a benefits onboarding that was really personal and like special for an employee, and made them really learn about their benefits, but that wasn't making them do that 30-minute meeting with every single new hire, especially in a high turnover situation where that just wasn't having an effect. And so I think with limited HR resources, just looking at what areas in the onboarding that you can repeat, where you're not like doing any individual things, like for each individual employee, unless a specific employee is coming and asking questions and really needs individual help.
Yeah, and this is an area that if you have any clients that have not yet used video for onboarding, it's really low-lying fruit, especially these days. Software like Descript, Descript, have just made it really simple to create videos and edit them really quickly. and provide them to clients. So I would just say video, in addition to, of course, Airbo, is a really good avenue to be able to solve some of these issues. It really does save time.
Yep. Good call out on that. Okay,
So
and I think our last one, tech savviness and multi-generational support.
yeah, maybe we could go to the next graph. I just want to cue this up a
Okay,
little. So
here we go.
It's a really funny time in the US workforce and maybe just life as a whole, because we have 4 very distinct generations in the workforce right now. We've got Gen Zers, which, like, amazingly are now tied with baby boomers effectively for their penetration in the United States workforce. So for those of us that maybe came into the workforce in the early 2000s, where baby boomers were the dominant generation in the workforce, it can be a really strange adjustment mentally to realize that they're really a shrinking population, and that Gen Zers are just as big of a population as baby boomers are today. Just shocking. This graph kind of blew me away. Millennials have now become like what baby boomers were in the early aughts, which is, we are now the dominant population. And then Gen Xers, we never did quite get their day in the sun as the biggest population. Oh no, actually, they had a run.
I was like, they had one little bump.
Yeah. The
in
early 2000s. I missed this. Yeah. But they're the second biggest population now, and so the population is really dominated by Gen X, by millennials. Boomers are on their way out. Gen Z's on the way up. And so when we think about what is the best technology to use in order to engage these populations, it's really good to keep this graph in mind. And obviously it's going to be different depending on the employer. And when we look at this graph, we're making implications about technology access and how different people use technology. And just another side note, if you've been in the industry for a while, like I have, there's a really good chance that you have biases towards older people being uncomfortable with technology and younger people being very comfortable with technology. And our experience shows that that is simply not the case anymore.
Yep.
The people who are left in the workforce and the people who have come into the workforce are really, really technology savvy. By definition, they grew up with it, or they had to adopt it very quickly in order to stay with the times. Kate, I'm really curious what you're seeing these days with these factors. I know we get some of these stories about 70-year-olds using Airbo once in a while, and I always I get really happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, we have some data from one of our groups that I think it's their population that participates at the highest rate is their 50 to 65-year-olds. It's not too far off from all the others, but I just found that really interesting because sometimes I'll be on like talking with someone and they'll say, our older population, like we can't implement a technology because they don't know how to. Populations those employees have Facebook and they have like a smartphone, because I think I don't know the number of smartphone and people that have smartphones off the top of my head, but it's incredibly high right now. But so basically, like what I would say here, just from a common challenges perspective, is it's going to be pretty similar to what we've said on the other things, is know your different workforces. So you need to look at what generations you have. And then as you are sending out communications or doing education, make sure that it could work for multiple generations. So like your Gen Z is probably not going to look at a flyer, or potentially not going to look at a flyer like your older populations have in the past. And so making sure that maybe you have digital screens up or something that is going to catch their attention a little bit differently. But I do find that Gen Z don't have to only be technology first. So they do look at benefit guides. for example. So those things that are put out, but it might just be that there's a PDF version and a hard copy version. And so I think, again, like main common challenge I would look at here is who are your different generations? And then what channels are you currently using? And are you using multiple channels that will make sure to hit those different generations? And then so that's really where I would like do an audit as well, and focus there. But I will say that your older population that say they are not technology accessible, it's probably a lie.
Perfect.
Yeah.
In the name of our upcoming super weekend, I need to place some bets. And so we're going to just be doing a quick poll. Got who will win the Super Bowl, got 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs, or of course, Taylor Swift are the three options. Oh man, wow, they are really neck and neck.
I was like, Taylor Swift really is up there.
After this, we're going to do a demo of Airbo, new hire onboarding free tool. And then we have a special surprise. So if we have some time and folks want to stay on, Airbo is built an AI tool to help answer benefit questions. We're very slowly making it available to people, and you would be one of the first to see it live. Okay, poll is over. And we got the 49ers coming in at 43%, Taylor Swift at 22%, the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, so I guess I know what my bet is.
49ers.
49ers.
We did just have a hand raise. Oh, I guess that maybe went away. Never mind. Okay. Vlad, before I jump into the demo of our new free hire, our free new hire benefits onboarding, just want to make sure, can you see my screen so others can see it?
Looking good.
Okay, perfect. So for those that don't know us super well, so Airbo is a benefits engagement tool. And so essentially what Airbo does is we help an employee navigate the benefits ecosystem in a really simple way. So we provide education to them, and then we drive them over to their different resources, whether that's for new hire benefits onboarding, open enrollment, or just general other educational topics throughout the year. And so this is an example of our free new program that we just released within the last couple months. And so this is available to our broker partners to offer to their clients for free. And so essentially the way it works is a new hire would come into this page, and it is mobile responsive. So it will work on a mobile device, it will just scale down, or it will work on a computer like we're looking at right now. And so a new hire will come in either via an email they receive, a text message, or maybe they scan a QR code or click a link. They're going to click on this Let's Go button, and this page is going to be completely branded for the organization. So it'll have your logo, your colors, all of that. And they're going to just click on what we call a tile. And a tile has three key elements. So it's got an image at the top, a video or a GIF, so something that captures employees' attention. It's got the information in the middle. And so this is really like what you're trying to get across to an employee. So this is an example of just what we call a welcome tile, where we're just welcoming them into the onboarding experience. And then you've got your interaction at the bottom. And this is what's going to drive an employee through the experience and also keep them engaged throughout. And so I'm just going to click Get Started as the employee to begin. And Airbo is going to automatically move me onto the next tile. My progress bar starts to fill up, and I'm just going to start going through the experience. And so we'll typically like to start with a welcome from the CEO, again, like in the vein of trying to make sure the experience is personal and really like special for an employee. And then since this is a focus on new hire benefits onboarding, we are going to just dive into the benefits information. And so we're going to use each tile to teach an employee about the different benefits that are available to them. And so throughout the experience, you'll notice we are going to ask different types of questions. So this is what we call a comprehension question. So we're asking an employee to prove that they understood what they read. They're going to click the correct answer once they get it, and we'll automatically move them on. And so the experience is going to just drive them through. And so I'm not going to make you all go through 23 tiles with me, but I will do a quick scroll to show you that we're going to cover medical plan, we're going to cover vision, dental, any benefit that the employer has and offers to that new hire, we're going to cover. And then towards the end of the experience for a new hire, we are going to drive them over to the enrollment site. So whether that's Navigator, Ease, Workday, we are going to direct an employee over to go and enroll in their benefits. And so the idea is an employee has gone through, learned about their benefits in a really simple format, and then we're taking them over to the enrollment site, which is going to lessen the number of questions that HR has coming through, lessen the number of like one-on-one sessions that they might need to do because they're just able to share this experience with their new hires and they go through and do it. We've been using it at Airbo for, man, I think like 5 or 6 years for our new hires. It's one of my favorite things that I can send over to them. I'm going through this fairly quickly just due to the timing, but I do want to show you a couple features just based on what we talked about. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Vlad.
Okay, before we go into that,
Yeah.
I think what's really fun about this, if you haven't heard yet, is that new hire benefits onboarding can be 100% free as long as your client gets it through you. So you can sign up any of, a broker can sign up any of their clients for Airbo new hire benefits onboarding, and we will create the content for it based on the onboarding guide, the new hire guide or the open enrollment documents that you already have, and do a call with the client to review it, and they can make small adjustments to it and continue to use it year after year. That's 100% free and is simply an entryway into our platform.
And Evelyn just posted the sign up link in the chat. So if you have any groups in mind, feel free to click that link and sign them up. We do have a limited number of implementation slots open for Q1. I think there's about 40 remaining. So feel free to just jump in, sign them up, and then we'll touch base with you to get the process going and get the benefits guide. And
we did have a question that I want to clarify. You mentioned this is free. Is there any client size restrictions? No, there's no client size restrictions. It is free for any group, regardless of size. 10 employees, it can be 250 employees, it can be 50,000 employees.
And then, do you want me to take the multi-language?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. So multi-language, there's a couple ways, but an employee will be able to click this language icon in the upper right, and then they can simply just change the language. So if they want to read it in Spanish, they just click Spanish, and then it is going to translate. And now all of the tiles are going to be in Spanish for the employee to go through and read. I will note that if employee is on their phone or on their browser and they already have like their browser set up to Spanish, it will detect that and ask if they want to translate versus them having to click the button.
Perfect.
And then let's see, do you want me to answer the next question? So Jack, what is the lead time you need to set up a group? So once we receive the benefit guide or the benefit summaries, it takes about 5 to 7 business days for us to set it up. And then we just need to set up a 30-minute call with the group to review how to review the content and then how to launch it out to employees. Because we'll make sure that like if they do new hire orientation, they will have like a slide that they can pop into that orientation. Or if they need flyers, we'll make sure they've got flyers with QR codes. So during the call with the group, we'll go over essentially how to roll it out to new hires in a really smooth way.
Yeah. And Jack also wanted to know, can I use this for my company to start test?
I don't see why not. If it's something, well, so yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's worth, yeah, maybe we want to chat separately, Jack, and discuss your needs and we can go from there.
Yeah, so if you want to use new hire onboarding for your company to do the new hire onboarding, yes, yeah, you can absolutely do that. And it is free for you, just like it would be for one of your clients. If it's more complicated than that, then Kate's answer.
Let's see.
Yeah, and then Jessica asked, if the company has different benefit offerings for specific employee populations, can the experience be customized?
Yes, so we can target tiles to different populations to show them different benefit guides or different eligibility. So absolutely, we can always make sure that the employee sees the correct information they should be.
Perfect.
Cool.
Kate, is there anything else on the new hire onboarding that you wanted to show before?
I don't think so. I went through it fairly quickly. I think the only other thing to mention is if anybody on the call would like to chat further or wants to learn a little bit more, just do like an in-depth discussion with your groups, please, I'll pop my email into the chat. Feel free to reach out and we can always set up separate time.
Yeah. And Evelyn, thank you for reminding us. We did have a question for this, that if you'd like for us to follow up with you about the free program with more details, we just didn't want it to dominate this whole webinar. We'd be happy to do that. Just click yes, and we'll make sure to reach out and schedule a time to chat. And when we follow up, we'll also drop some resources to you by email with additional information there as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Man, Kate, you've been on a real presentation. You're like presentation central right now.
I know, it's so fun.
I would love it if we could show Airbo AI to finish us up. This is something that we're really excited about because I think in the ideal universe, we would all have a very personalized benefits assistant that would help us to make good decisions on a daily basis. And our opinion at Airbo, with all the work that we've done around education, is that benefits is just too complicated for most people to fully learn them. And until they're able to kind of abstract that up and have someone give them the answer, I think a lot of people are still going to be left out from getting the best answers. So that's why we built Airbo AI. And the idea is that employees can ask any questions as they would a person on site, someone who's a benefits expert, and get the right answer. So Kate, maybe you could kind of show a few questions and answers.
Yeah.
So we really like this one because it starts with a very general question, which is what most employees usually start with. And the answer is being pulled from documents that have been uploaded into Airbo AI. And so they're factually correct. And they're being put through a few different filters for making sure that it covers the HR angle, making sure it covers the legal angle, making sure it also answers as an emergency room doctor. And you'll see that it does a few things. One is that it encourages the employee to make sure that they report the injury. It promotes our free telemedicine service. And it encourages them to go see an urgent care center if it's severe or persistent pain. Also makes it really easy to get contact information for something that they're interested in doing. So really taking all these things that are usually really difficult to get to online or in many pages of microsites or benefit sites or HRIS or intranets, and making it accessible in a conversational format. So I think it's a fairly revolutionary thing that's going to fundamentally change how we engage with people around benefits and the kinds of decisions that they're able to make.
Yeah. And I think I would just add that one thing I often hear is employees have to like essentially go up the chain to get questions answered. And so they can't get immediate responses to things. And I think when an employee is in like a high stress situation, like their child is injured, and they like don't know exactly what to do, chances are they like might go to the ER when they don't actually need to, because they just don't know a response. Like they don't know the step to take and how their benefits could support them. And I think that's the really cool piece, is we're able to get responses to employees in such a fast way where they don't have to like send an email into a benefits inbox that then doesn't get responded until the next benefit hour. They don't have to call a call center. And so it just makes it a more streamlined version. So I hear that a lot, and I think that's where I get excited.
Stephanie asked the question, which I might have missed this, is this AI chat feature available now or in the future? We are launching this to our first client, which is about 150,000 employees, at the end of March. And we are backlogging a list of early signups. We'll be doing a cascading rollout starting in Q2. So if you or your clients are interested in getting on the wait list for this, we can absolutely follow up with you and get you on the wait list and do a more thorough demo. But it is starting to be available as in about 45 days for our first client. And then from there, we will be adding companies off the wait list. And Mary asked, does Airbo AI also integrate with the company's benefit guide? Like, can the employee ask AI where the information can be located in the benefit guide? Yes, but it'll do one better. It'll actually serve up the information from the benefit guide to the employee in this format so that they don't have to go to the benefit guide, but they get the information from it that's relevant to them. So yeah, the benefit guide is actually one of the documents that we upload to power this system. Cool. Well, I know we're at time. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It was so much fun talking to y'all. Kate, you're a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for answering all these wonderful questions.